Hi, my name is Derrick McManus. I'm a police officer and a professional speaker. I was in Star Force for 11 years between 1989 and 2000. The Barossa Siege in 1994 was an operation where Star Group, Special Task and Rescue Group section that I was working for at that time, we were asked to go and arrest a guy who had a warrant for 197 counts of fraud. We knew his history, we knew there was a potential that something may go wrong, he may get violent, and that's why they asked Star Group to go and effect a high risk arrest. We attended there were 4 other members of Star Group, myself and a guy with a video camera from police camera section, and we went there, we knocked on the door, called out that we wanted to speak to the guy inside. There was no answer. I've moved down the side of the house. As I got within about 2 feet of the sliding door, he started to shoot. I was the target. He fired 18 times with an SKK 7.62 rifle, Chinese military assault rifle. He hit me 14 times within 5 seconds. I was then lying on the ground for 3 hours before they can get me out.
Roger. Many shots. Winning everywhere.
I just suddenly started falling to the ground and I started cursing myself because I had no idea why I was falling. I hadn't felt any impact, I hadn't felt any pain, I hadn't heard the sound of anything happening around me. All I knew was I was falling to the ground. And I was cursing myself, how could I be so stupid? As I was falling to the ground though, I looked at that glass sliding door again and there were small round holes in there that I hadn't seen before. And then I heard the sound of gunfire somewhere in the distance behind it. And so as I was falling to the ground, I've rationalised to myself, the small round holes, the sound of gunfire, I must be falling because I'm getting shot. And before I'd even hit the ground, I actually started rationalising to myself, Derrick, don't be too hard on yourself because if you're getting shot, it's quite acceptable to fall over. But I did fall down. I fell onto my back with my feet pointing directly at where the bullets are coming from and my head facing away. And it was while I was lying here on the ground that 2 bullets hit my left thigh. These are the only 2 bullets that I can actually remember hitting me, and at the time they hit me, time slowed down. The first one hit me and it felt like a sledgehammer just absolutely driving into my thigh, and then I felt this shockwave go up through my body, all the way through to the top of my head. This shockwave settled back down through my body, back down to the point of impact. And then the second bullet hit, and again it was that sledgehammer, shockwave up, shockwave back down. Those 2 bullets hit me in that space of time. It seemed to take about 30 seconds. And the thought that ran through my head was I'd better not shoot myself in the foot, because the guys at work will never stop giving me stick for it for the rest of my life. You can just imagine, you get shot 14 times and then you shoot yourself as well. With Dr. Bill Griggs, medical attendant, the doctor, at the time he got to me, he estimated that I was about 30 seconds from death because I just didn't have any colour in my skin. I didn't have any, I wasn't breathing, there was no sound, there was no movement. He thought I was already dead until I took this last gasping breath. And then he put his life and his team's life at risk to save mine. And then they got me to hospital, and as they say, the rest is history. My feelings during the experience were strange to some. Some people don't understand how I could be relaxed during that time. But I think it was part of my pre-planning for this. I made a conscious decision to join Star Group, put myself in a position where I may be shot and injured, I may be shot and killed. I consciously accepted responsibility for the choice. I also accepted responsibility for the outcomes and knew I needed to have a plan of action that if it did happen, this is what I need to do to manage it in the best way possible. And as a result of that, I knew exactly what was going to happen, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I felt confident that I had the ability to do it. And that just all fell into place. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a comfortable, it wasn't an enjoyable experience, but it was one that I was relaxed, that I took responsibility for the choices I was making, and I now needed to deal with it. At about the 2 3/4 hour mark, where I was lying on the ground for 2 3/4 hours, constantly bleeding, monitoring my body closing down, accepting blood was just going to my kidneys, my lungs, my heart, my brain. At the 2 hour 45 point, even my vision closed down. And at that point I started saying to myself, is this it? Is this the end for me? But it's at that point I also started fighting my hardest. Started moving my body the little bit that I could, that I still had some energy left. Started speaking out loud to myself and saying, Derrick, don't give up. Derrick, keep on fighting. And so that fear of death certainly came in at that point. It became even more reality. And at that time I thought to myself, I do not want to leave my children without a father. I still love doing the job I'm doing, but if there's any way that I can stay alive for my children's sake, then I will fight for it. So for the 3 hours I was lying on the ground, that was my whole focus, just to get back to my children, be able to run and hop and skip and jump. But I also accepted that if I spent the rest of my life in a wheelchair, that's totally acceptable as well. My whole philosophy was anything better than death is going to be a bonus to me.
When I first saw Derrick in the Royal Adelaide, he wasn't expected to survive. He had so many injuries and he had lost so much blood. So the risk of infection, the risk of organ failure was very, very high. So when I met him again at Modbury after his rehab, it was a beautiful surprise to see how well he was. He was back home, of course, he was walking around, he was doing things, essentially normally. I think he had a limp at that stage, but it really wasn't bad. So that was a dramatic change. And over the years, getting to know Derrick so well, it is his strength of character that got him through. There is no doubt in my mind about that.
To recover after the incident, it's hard to define what recovery is. I spent 28 days in hospital. I walked out of hospital without any assistance, despite doctors telling me I wouldn't walk for months. I then spent the next 9 months in intensive rehabilitation, just learning how to move my fingers. Every one of my fingers, I had to learn how to move them again. And it took me 9 months before I was able to make a return to work. Going back to fully operational took a full 2.5 years. And at the end of that 2.5 years, I went back to Star Group, back to fully operational with that section that I'd left on the day. About 5 or 6 days after the shooting, I threw my hand in the air and said, get me a psych. I want to talk to a psych. Not because I thought I was weak, not because I thought I was going around the twist or anything else. I just wanted to pick their brain, find out what I might encounter mentally, emotionally from here forward. And they've dealt with people who have dealt with it badly. I wanted to learn from that. They've dealt with people who have dealt with it well. I wanted to learn from that as well. I knew that there were possibly going to be nightmares, flashbacks, recurring dreams, all those sorts of challenges. And I wanted to find out how I might be able to deal with it if it did happen to me. I had a 3-hour meeting with one of the best psychiatrists in Adelaide. He's world renowned for his dealing with people with PTSD, and at the end of that 3-hour session he said to me, Derrick, I don't think I need to see you again. I had my head in the right space and I was able to anticipate what might happen. I was also able to iterate to him exactly how I would manage those challenges if they came up. And he said, Derrick, I don't need to see you again unless you really want to see me. And that essentially was the end of the discussion. Returning to work was both sensational and challenging. Going through those challenges sent me into depression. Now, a lot of people say that the depression is PTSD related to the shooting. I don't believe I have any PTSD in relation to the shooting at all. My PTSD, as they've described it, is in relation to how people were dealing with me after the shooting. In hindsight, essentially it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Would I want to live it again? No. But it's defined who I am. Not by what happened as a result of it, but it's how I managed it at the time. I've been able to look back on that and say, I dealt with that so well, how can I take that learning and put it into other areas of my life? And as a result of doing that, people have gone, I want to learn that as well. And that's what's thrown me onto a world stage for speaking. These days I spend a lot of time as an inspirational speaker, speaking at conferences. I've been to Fiji, I've been to Singapore, I've been to America 4 times, New Zealand. What I talk to people about is managing challenges, and it comes back to my model of durability, and durability is about sustaining optimum performance, and optimum performance is the very best you can possibly do given the circumstances. And if you anticipate what those circumstances are, you can implement that plan immediately.
Yeah, durability is an important issue because in someone like Derrick, who had so many injuries, his scar tissue is an issue. It must be an issue. So he's got large areas of his body where he's lost muscle mass, and scar tissue replaces that. So the muscle that is left cannot work as efficiently as it did before, which means what is left has to work that much harder. So he worked incredibly hard to rehabilitate himself. He got himself back to a very high level of fitness and work level and normal life. But for him to say, right, I've achieved it, I can stop now, that scar tissue would take over again. Not necessarily grow, but it would stop that efficiency of those muscle fibres again. So what muscle fibre is left would diminish again, and the scar tissue would become a big problem again. So he needs to continually work at this for the rest of his life, basically. Yeah.
The future for me is continuing with speaking and continuing with training other people on how to become durable themselves. I've just put in place some plans to start the Australian Centre for Human Durability, and out of that I'm going to deliver obviously courses on durability, but any other programs that fit for building strength within people, giving them insight into the challenges that they may encounter and how they might deal with those challenges. And that goes right down to positive parenting, positive attitude, positive conversations, and dealing with difficult people in our lives, because we always come across them. But certainly durability and resilience are going to be the basis of that centre.